Mycelium. So the role that mycelium plays in nature is super important and very fascinating. The role it plays in the soil, between plants, and moving nutrients around, having like electrical signals and almost being like this neural net in the soil is amazing. But I don't think that's what you're asking about. I think you're asking about mycelium, mushroom mycelium in supplements. So a little background on what mycelium is. It is an element of or part of the fungal kingdom that is generally not seen by human eyes in nature because it's inside of things. It's either like, let's say you see a reishi mushroom growing on a tree. The mycelium will be still inside that tree trunk. Let's say you see like other mushrooms growing around, the mycelium, if it's like a ground mushroom, the mycelium is in the soil. Mycelium runs throughout the soil, and it's amazing stuff and just very interesting to learn more about and research, and something you should check out. And there's lots of fun documentary type information on it out there. But in the context of supplementation, it's a little bit different. It's not quite as cool because there's multiple ways in the modern world that medicinal mushrooms are grown. One way is in the traditional method, or the natural way, is that you grow it on wood. That's what, if you look at these mushrooms, like turkey tail, like reishi, like chaga, these are in nature found growing on wood. That's their natural food. And if that's been their food forever, to take them and suddenly try to grow them on a different medium, it's probably not going to work out too well. So what companies often do, especially in the US, is that they grow mushrooms on a medium of grain. Sometimes it's brown rice, sometimes it's oats, and this allows them to do it in a laboratory. This allows them to do it in a way that is easier for them to get organic certification. And the downside is the product is vastly subpar. Now, there is one exception to this that I know of. There's one company that has really mastered the growing of mushrooms on a base of sorghum, and they do it really well. A lot of these things that I'm about to say don't apply to them. So this is not in 100% of cases, but in the vast majority of cases, here is what happens. They don't do a good job. And if you analyze what's left over afterwards, you see a very high number for, like, if you analyze what's being put in the capsule that one would be taken, or in the powder. You analyze it, and there's a very high level of polysaccharides. And at first glance, somebody who's just kind of starting to learn a little bit more about mushrooms and what's good in them that you want might say, oh, that's great, look at these levels of polysaccharides. Polysaccharides, certain kinds of them, are the immunologically active compounds in the mushrooms that upgrade your immune system. However, not all polysaccharides are created equal. There's what's called beta-glucans. These are the amazing things that we're actually after and what you want. And then there's alpha-glucans. Alpha-glucans you can get just by eating very common, like, grain carbohydrates like brown rice or oats. They're very rich in alpha-glucans. Alpha-glucans don't really do much for you. They're just starch, basically. And so when you look at these products that are grown on grain, and they're marketed as mycelium, because if you're growing a reishi on a tree, you're not going to get the mycelium out. It's in that tree trunk. It's in that wood. You're not going to touch it. So the mycelium is just left behind. When you're growing on grain, you access the mycelium because you just take all the grain and you grind that up, and one would hope that the grain would have been completely metabolized by the fungi. However, it's not. So you end up with things that are like 50% or more alpha-glucan polysaccharides, and between like 0 and 1% sometimes beta-glucans. And so you're not getting like hardly any actual mushroom matter in there. And what you're getting in the finished product is almost entirely just ground up grain like brown rice or oats. So this is not good news at all. Of course, there are studies that have been done on high quality mycelium that have shown some benefits there, but you need to, at the very least, make sure that you ask the company for test results showing the breakdown of alpha-glucans and beta-glucans. But even beyond that, I would say whenever possible, still go for mushrooms that have been grown on wood, because there are certain compounds that mushrooms can only produce if they're grown on wood. If they're grown on grain, they can't make those compounds. An example would be in reishi, the triterpenoids that are the adaptogenic compounds in the reishi that help to modulate stress response, etc., that give reishi a lot of its legend and lore and health benefits. Reishi doesn't make these if you grow it on grain. It only makes them if grown on hardwood. So that is why our mushrooms are grown on hardwood, because that's the way they've evolved to grow, that's the way they grow the strongest, and that's the way they're going to deliver you the most benefits.